Welcome to Season 1, Episode 6 of Digital Dissection, where we take a closer and possibly unnecessary look into our favorite properties. We'd like to take a special moment to recognize our new followers on our different platforms. You've taken us from 3 dedicated listeners to over 100 plus in less than 24 hours, and we could not be any more grateful. So thank you all so very much. This week, we're picking our starter and hoping that we remember not to transfer it as we break down the Pokemon Go mobile game.
Now, before we augment our reality and dial our clocks back to 2016, we'd like to mention a few housekeeping items. We are Joe and Mark, 2 dudes who love talking movies, video games, and pop culture in general with you. We are a mostly humble operation that needs your help by liking, commenting, subscribing, and leaving us a review wherever you might have found us. Speaking of finding us, here are a few ways. You can find us on YouTube at the Digital Dissection Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and also catch us on Spotify by searching for at Digital Dissect 1 or Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast. You'll notice that we keep saying this pretty much every week. What this does is help us grow and to keep making sure that you've got at least an hour of your workday covered. It's time to get serious. So let's turn our hats backwards and throw our balls out there. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Now, Mark, I, for one, have been dreaming about knowing or wanting to be the very best, like no one ever was since 1998. But I'm also aware not everyone's been on that same goal, and we all hopped in at different points, which brings us to 2016, when Pokemon, after at that point, nearly 2 decades worth of gaming. Actually, if we think from Japan launch, that was 2 decades worth of gaming.
I think it was actually meant to coincide with the 20th anniversary of Pokemon, wasn't it?
I think it was, yeah. So after 20 years of pocket monsters and badge getting and Orange you were Pokemon Rangering, a new game was made. And that game had hella hype, and it was called and is called Pokemon Go.
Yeah, and it has absolutely robbed many hours from us over the last the last 5 years.
Oh yeah. Although robbed, I mean, there are definitely times where we really purposefully sank hours into that game.
Oh, absolutely. Like a couple of cowboys riding across the desert late at night, you and I would be in a car sometimes until 2:30 to 3 a.m. Just to go after a Rhyhorn.
Yeah. And this was at a time when Rhyhorns just weren't everywhere, and you had to really look for those things. And so you just went deep in the night looking for some Rhyhorn.
Yeah, they were as rare as a bald eagle for some reason. And I hope they taste better though. But either way, Gen 1 was definitely unique, wasn't it?
It definitely was. And it was an interesting time because, well, I mean, it's like every generation Niantic does, is they don't release the full generation of Pokemon at a time. They release around half usually. So Gen 1 pops out and you're just catching Pokemon. Which, do you remember the original, the launch commercial for this game?
It's not coming to me. I just remember wait, is that the one where the Squirtle was following around the kid and it was, I mean, you basically were fighting back tears even if you didn't play Pokemon ever.
Oh yeah, absolutely adorable. And then they go through this kid and his Squirtle and other things happening, and they show you aspects of what you're expecting in the game. You're going out there catching Pokemon, you're trading Pokemon, you're battling other trainers. You see people holding their phones, and you see oh, someone's challenging you and all this stuff. And as someone who played Pokemon for the longest time, seriously, I've been there since Gen 1 and I never really took a break. I take that back. I took a break in high school because I wanted to be cool, but I wasn't cool. But I tried kind of hard. But anyway, um, yeah, like
Deep
seeing
dive
that
for
there, it's
another
like,
time.
wait, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which that's why I think, 2016 was like the first world peace we've actually felt in a long time. And it was because of several reasons. So obviously one that you mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have people who've wanted to experience this type of, augmented reality or just this type of interaction with Pokemon, because previous to this point, you could only play the main Pokemon games on largely handheld consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can play it on, there's with the battle arena on like
Oh,
N64.
Stadium, man,
Yeah,
Stadium,
Stadium.
legit.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Pokemon Snap was the other one. Which,
It's back. They made another one. So,
it it just felt like House of the Dead, but instead of zombies and like, mutated creatures
mm-hmm.
chilling out, it's just Pokemon, but
Which
whatever. It was on
I mean,
rails.
I am fine going off on a full tangent on Pokemon Snap sometime, and just the ridiculousness that was trying to get a picture of Mew in that game.
I
But
think
for
I'd be
now,
yeah.
we'll
I'd be okay
we'll
with like
continue 2016.
a big deer hunter kind of game, but with Pokemon.
Oh
I
my
mean, because I mean, and this doesn't get too far off the topic here, but you know, it, people are eating Pokemon. They've got to be. I mean,
Yeah, there maybe. I think I
well,
want to
come
see
on.
somewhere they acknowledge that there are still actual animals like alive and well in like the Pokemon world. We just don't see them because they're not as fun.
Yeah, they can't just be eating like Brock's cooking, dude. Like, I mean, Magikarp have got to be like regular fish. I'm
Hmm.
sure there's plenty of them out there.
Oh yeah, you can eat
And
those for
yeah,
days.
yeah. How else could these things survive? They've got to be eviscerating each other out
Well,
there.
again, I
Like,
mean, they're definitely eating each other. That's a
yeah,
given. Hmm.
and I'm sure the humans have got to be eating them. I mean, but
Probably. I mean, maybe more than likely. I mean, I remember like reading old Pokédex entries, and it does talk about how like some Pokemon do eat each other. So that's a thing.
see, that's
Hmm.
what we want. That's what the fans have been clamoring
Yeah.
for, or at least that's what I'm going to claim
Hmm.
that they've been clamoring for over 20 years. Just show us Pokemon eating each other, guys.
Yeah.
Seriously.
It's all we've been
Pokemon
wanting.
Company.
Hmm.
Jesus. Well,
I do
yeah.
recall like some old promotional art though, like showing like a guy and literally like a border collie like running through the Pokemon world. There's like some sort of like festival setting. So I think it's supposed to be acknowledging that there are still actual animals out there. We just rarely see them in any of the material because it's not the point of it. But I
Fascinating.
digress. Yeah.
Hmm. Well,
Hmm.
to get back to what we were talking about with world peace, right? Like, so for those of you who've played Pokemon Go, or for the ones who haven't, let's just kind of close our eyes for a moment and think about this. So there's a park that's, maybe about a half mile from my house called McKee Farms Park. And for those of you who are probably stalking me in Google Maps, you're still not going to find out where I live. But with this park, I mean, it's a pretty large park. You went there actually.
I did. I had a
When
mission at McKee Farms Park that was
it was a
terribly,
Charmander
terribly
nest.
sad, and I failed miserably. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, yeah. Well, ultimately, Pokemon Go. There's a couple of things we'll get into here, but for this story, there are certain areas where specific Pokemon will just hang out. So the developers of the game were able to essentially create nests, quote unquote. And so one of the early nests at McKee Farms Park was the Charmander, which is one of the most popular starters in the game. Everybody loves
Yep.
Charmander for some reason. I mean, I don't know. I'm not ever going to say I'd go grass or water, but either way, he's pretty solid. And when we talk about this idea of world peace, I remember the first time I went to McKee Farms when this dude showed up, and we're talking. There's over like 1,000 people that are here playing the
Hmm.
game, laughing with each other. I mean, it's like 100 degrees outside in the middle of the summer, and everyone's running around. They're having a great time. People are socializing. They're doing all the things that COVID would literally never allow us to
Yeah.
do anymore.
Hmm.
And that's why I say it was the closest thing to world peace, because you could just walk up to anybody. You knew what they were doing,
Yeah.
unless they had like like some kind of recreational drugs in their hand, but they might even be playing too. But I mean,
Hmm.
think about that. If you remember it, I mean, that's how I met a bunch of people. I just walked up to them and I say, "Hey, you play Pokemon Go?" I'm like, "Yep, cool. Do you have a criminal history?" I'm like, "No, I do not." And they're like,
No.
"Great, let's hang out."
Perfect. Let's keep hanging out. Yeah. And I mean, that was the thing. Like it would made it completely sociable. It was backwards, or normally you would associate someone's on their phone and looking at it. They want to be left alone. But in 2016 was the first time where someone's like staring at their phone as they're walking. And it was totally cool to walk over and talk to them about like, hey, you you see that Squirtle over there? And they're like, what, a Squirtle? Yeah, no, I didn't see it. Let's go get it. and it was just so much fun. And then every once in a while, you run into the one kid still geocaching. Good for them using their math skills and mapping skills. But for the most part, like everyone was playing Pokemon Go. We were all having a good time, and we were all happy to talk to each other and help each other out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it was totally a crowdsourced affair because,
Hmm.
there were other places that I would visit throughout the city where it was exactly that. And people would have, quote unquote lore parties where you basically place this little module on the discs that you can spin in the game to
Hmm.
get items. And people would just load these things up. And so you would have, anywhere from sometimes 50 to 100 people. Things are spawning off of these stops and people are yelling it back and forth. I mean, it was almost, it felt like the stock market. It was unbelievable.
Hmm.
So
Oh
yeah.
man, yeah, no, those early days were a lot of fun though. Uh, like I just remember, like again, like I live in a more rural area, so it wasn't quite the same as your experience. It was still like vastly positive. I actually met a girlfriend at one point in time by playing Pokemon Go, which was crazy enough as it was. Um,
Yeah, we don't talk about that though.
we don't talk about that. Those were different times. But anyway, um, yeah, like it was just really, really great. The game mechanics were fairly simple, but also addictive at the same time. So you just had what originally it came out like you could basically just catch stuff, and that was it. That was the extent of the game initially. You were given, I think, maybe 75 of the original 151 Pokemon. And yes, I will say original 151 because Mew is hidden in that game. It's there. You just can't get to it. But anyway, um, yeah, the original
Yeah.
151, you're getting 75 to just try and get, with some things being more rare than others. Like I remember do you remember how like nerve-wracking it was to try and find Dratini when this game first came out? Like he was nowhere.
Oh, there was a joke online too because
Mm-hmm.
Dratini was one of those Pokemon that wasn't supposed to nest, and through a glitch in the game in the very beginning, there was a Dratini nest, and I think it was at a university or
Mm-hmm.
something. And I can go look back and find this, but when they switched the nest for the first time, the
Mm-hmm.
great shift, the nest migration of 2016.
Before we knew such a thing was possible.
Oh, before we knew, if only we could look back and tell our past selves about it. But there was a sign on a door that said, that this here lies the final resting place of a Dratini nest,
I
and it showed a
remember that.
little that little
Mm-hmm.
Dratini with the sad eyes on the door.
Mm-hmm.
And I yeah, I mean they were very rare. And I remember actually going back, you and I were doing one of our late night rounds here, barking at the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we found one just right next to one of the home improvement stores, and we both couldn't believe it because back then there was no
Yeah.
there's no way to track stuff really
Mm-hmm.
reliably, and so we were just driving along, and all of a sudden I see that that blue and white hue coming from out of the side of
Mm-hmm.
the side of my eye, and I go, what is
What is
this?
that?
Because I was ignorant to Pokemon at that point. I mean, I had literally never played a Pokemon game. I mean,
Yeah.
I hadn't consumed any of the media at that point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was green. I was very, very green.
Yeah, yeah. No, you definitely came in 2016. Like you
Yeah,
were, yeah, like you were brand new to that game.
not even going to pretend.
Mm-mm.
But I will say the very first Dragonite that I ever saw, because back then, they were still in the wild, was I remember the exact day. It was September 19th, 2016. And I was on my way to work, and I used to do a little route because for those of you who don't know how I play video games, I pretty much establish patterns that make me successful. I get very methodical with it. And when it comes to games where I have to grind for things, I mean, I absolutely get this down to a T. And so I would map out this course every morning on the way to work. And what would I find one morning but this big orange smiley looking bastard? And I had never seen one before. And once again, I'm very green at this stage, so I had absolutely no idea what I was looking at. And if you remember back then, Dragonite was practically like a mile and a half back on the screen.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Like
he used to be like a football field away.
yeah,
Like you had to try and get that Hail Mary pass to like try and catch him. It was nuts.
you needed a running start to catch
Mm-hmm.
this mother, back then. So I was there. Back then, I think I only had like 5 Ultra Balls. I had And to explain this out for some folks who may not have played it before, there's three different types of Pokeballs. You use them, you chuck them at them, you hope they stay in. And I think I only had 5 Ultra Balls back then, and maybe like a handful of just regular ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I caught it on like the 5th Ultra Ball, and I was thinking like, man, if I don't get this thing now, I will never get it. And yeah, history was made,
Yeah.
and I still have that dragon. I still have him in my inventory now.
Is that the mailman?
No, the mailman would come later. That
Okay.
was because I hadn't watched the original film yet, which you would
Mm-hmm.
bring over on one of these these journeys we would take. But the mailman was the second Dragonite that I would catch,
Mm-hmm.
and I would run into him 2 months later. So I think it was in
Ooh,
November, just before my birthday, when that dude was found.
nice. So, speaking of a fun little nugget of information, for those of you listening, if you recall when the first movie came out and you went to it and they gave you a card from the trading card game based off of the movie, I went to that movie 4 times to get all of the cards. That's how dedicated I was to this once upon a time. Um, yeah, I had a problem, and it was to catch them all in every capacity.
Well, the problem you have is one that a lot of us have playing this game, and that's just
Hmm.
that collector mentality, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, I have a fairly addictive personality when it comes to collecting items, and
Hmm.
you know about this based on the
Oh.
wall of collectibles, the nerdery, as we both have in our homes.
Hmm.
So we both are very clearly addictive personalities to an extent.
A little bit, yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But one thing I wanted to get into here, because there's a lot of interesting things that we can do from a knowledge journey here, talking about the history of AR, or augmented reality.
Hmm.
And I wanted to spend a little bit of time on that before we get into some of the things about Pokemon Go, because you and I have, I mean, we have like a Martin Luther list of indulgences here that
Oh yes. Hmm.
we would nail to John Hankey's door, the CEO of Niantic.
Hmm.
But augmented reality has a fairly interesting history, and it goes back a little ways. So do you remember, or do you know about this firsthand, when the first AR based technologies really began to, the inception of them?
Uh, I believe it was 2009 with the birth of Rhinoplasty Go, and it was meant to try and teach plastic surgeons how to actually perform nose jobs while they were on their way to work.
You're just a little ways off.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and I'm going to blow the doors open on this like an 18-pound baby.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1968, Ivan Sutherland actually developed the first like head mounted display. So just think of, like a TV screen, right? Or some kind
Mm-hmm.
of screen that was just attached to your head. Pretty limited usage there. But Ivan Sutherland was actually like a computer programmer slash scientist who would really keep with um, some of these touch screen based technologies. And he's actually credited with making the first GUI, or
Mm.
guided user interface, right?
Yep.
So he would end up winning a Turing Award for this. It'd be being called the Sketchpad.
Mm-hmm.
So the Turing Award, though, named after, you guessed it, Alan Turing, our friend from our robotics episode.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yes,
just
the man who let us know if the machines we're falling desperately in love with are actually self-aware to what they're doing.
And now we're wearing them on our heads, Joe. but, but tell you what, man, just like swallowing a quarter on accident, the journey continues. So 1974, Myron Kruger, who is a computer researcher, created what was called video place. And what this technology used was basically silhouettes. So, a person would stand in front of a screen, and it would just use contrast to pinpoint where you are in space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, you would then be allowed to touch numbers on the screen. You could see a number, you could see an option, you could click it, and it would interact with you. And from that point, there's a couple other pit stops here, but these ones are kind of quick to get through. So I'll just kind of list them off for you. The actual term augmented reality would be coined by Tom Caudell, who worked for the Boeing Corporation back in 1990. In 1992, a United States Air Force researcher, Louis Rosenberg, would create what's called virtual fixtures. And this was like the first actual AR system where you could impact your reality, or what they called mixed reality, by operating machinery from from a location other than the physical one. So the AR technology actually goes back fairly far, at least
Hmm.
the origins of it go. But what do you think was the most common usage of AR technology right around the mid to late 90s?
Oh no. Um, I mean, my head goes to a terrible spot because typically, whenever there's like a new like entertainment like thing, um, it's usually used for something naughty. So this just makes me think like this is, I'm gonna go rogue and just say it's a restaurant simulator as opposed to going with where my head was originally going.
I wrote that question assuming you would think it was sexy, and fortunately in this case it actually isn't.
Oh,
um,
yes, good.
so in 1998, AR technology would actually be utilized in the NFL to create the 1st and 10 system, which,
Oh,
as you clearly have seen in modern day, right? They only
hmm.
got better with that technology. But
Yeah, they moved the chains a few times with that.
yeah, but just think about the league in the NFL.
Hmm.
They didn't have any kind of augmented systems like that, at least for the unified NFL, for that their first 30 years. And clearly the leatherheads of old would have
Oh
had
yeah.
nothing like that.
Hmm.
um, but that's really where it kind of started to pick up, right?
Hmm.
And so it wouldn't actually be until like I would say like the mid to late 2000s where we start to see things like Google Glass, Microsoft HoloLens, where you're actually wearing products that are interacting with your environment and doing all those types of things, right?
Hmm.
The stuff that Back to the Future 2 thought we would have had 6 years ago.
Yeah, we were promised a lot for that 2015 that just never happened.
Yeah. Well, I
I'm
mean,
mostly
yeah.
upset over the fashion choices and the dehydrated Pizza Hut pizzas. That's the biggest uh, failure out of Back to the Future. Not the flying cars, not any of the other cool advancements, just those two.
I mean, as a kid, I thought dehydrating a pizza sounded really stupid, but the functions of that, it's just the convenience alone.
Oh, yeah. And the fact that no one can rehydrate a pizza quite like Marty's mom.
Yes, yeah,
No one
because it's
can
so
no one can press the buttons like you, mom. No one knows that combination.
just kind of like what we mentioned with the white hoods in the last episode. Sometimes you just don't realize how bad things are going to sound until you say them, and that was
Yeah.
one of those
Hmm.
lines.
Yep.
Just it's like, yeah, you can press a button. But well, I'll tell you what, as we
Yeah.
rattle off the
Hmm.
timeline here, though, so we were kind of caught up to the mid to late 2000s,
Hmm.
and so 2014 would be a big year for Pokemon Go. And you may be asking yourself, why would 2014 be a big year considering Pokemon Go wouldn't exist until 2016?
Um, Ash Ketchum has his 17th, 10th birthday.
Well, it's actually a really good answer, but this would actually mark a chance encounter between Satoru Iwata of Nintendo and Tsunekazu Ishihara of the Pokemon Company. So the folks that, not Nintendo, the folks that
Hmm.
actually run the Pokemon development. So as an April Fool's collaboration, they put together this idea for utilizing Google Maps as a means to, find Pokemon in the real world. So this April Fool's joke goes up. People are literally losing their minds. Open a window and a breeze rolls in, right?
Yeah.
People are literally jizzing in their pants over this. So yeah, so ultimately you would have a fella named John Hankey who would found Niantic, and we would get the game Ingress, which was the precursor to Pokemon Go, which a lot of the data is built off of that, utilizing
Hmm.
Google Maps. So yeah, it was like this chance encounter really is what set this game up and what allowed us to have this multi-billion-dollar property that we have today. So either way, we mentioned John Hankey though,
Hmm.
right? So John Hankey is not a stranger to the gaming world. And he actually worked on a game that was also a precursor to another big one
Hmm.
called Meridian 59. And
And who can
Meridian,
forget a catchy game like Meridian 59?
I was going to say, it's got, yeah, the kids are wearing shirts with it. I see it on bumper stickers. it's just so catchy.
Yep, it's
Um,
just it only they just they I can remember also like the gang wars between the Meridian 59 kids and then the Equator 54 boys
oh,
and how they just did not get along at all.
well, but the Equator 54 boys would leave you alone if you'd flash a 5 on one hand and a 4 on the other. So long as they knew how to recognize you, you're in the clear.
Hmm.
But Meridian 59 was actually one of the first open world like MMORPGs. I mean, it's like one of the earliest social based RPGs that was out there, which would eventually be like an influencer for World of Warcraft. So Henke actually had his hands in things pretty early in the gaming community from a social sense.
Hmm.
And you can actually still play Meridian 59 today, like believe it or not.
Oh, that server's still going strong?
Yeah. So for now, the 100 plus folks that are listening to this, you can definitely still find Meridian 59. I mean, I don't know if I would play it at this point, but hey, give it a
Well,
shot.
I'm gonna hop on there. Better late than never, right?
Yeah, exactly. And there's a couple other connections here I wanted to point out.
Hmm.
So after this point, Henke would found Keyhole, which was another software based company, and it was funded by InQtel, which ended up actually being the CIA's venture capital arm of their operations. So I
Oh,
didn't actually know that.
no, that sounds. I was gonna say when you were listing off the names here, I think you know what this is probably some sort of weird clandestine government organization that's trying to take over the entire world, and then lo and behold, that's
there-
exactly kind of what it is. Minus the whole take over the world bit potentially. We don't know. We don't work there.
yeah, isn't that weird? I mean,
Hmm.
it feels like all signs point to robots taking over the world, no matter what we do. but but yeah, in this case though, it's just the CIA so far.
Hmm.
And what would actually be interesting later on is that once once Henke would actually end up leaving Keyhole, formulate other businesses. InQtel's CEO, his name was Gilman Louis, and he would actually go on to become the board of directors for Niantic. So maybe we should keep some of our criticisms a little bit more light in nature, just in case, because I just can't be black bagged this week. I got stuff I've got to do yet. So yeah. So we may want to go a
Yep.
little easy on criticism
Okay.
there, but
Maybe.
um but yeah, so that there's some interesting connections there, right? Like we've obviously got this chance encounter with Nintendo and the Pokemon company, but now we've literally
Hmm.
got the CIA involved in helping Niantic establish its roots. I mean, that to me is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would not have thought that the Central Intelligence Agency had any sort of hand in my Pokemon addiction. Um, but now it kind of makes sense. I just noticed like whenever I think okay, so I don't know about you, but like when I'm playing the game, I do notice like with my phone, with my fantastic Samsung Note 8 that's still hanging in there. I get like this bottom blue bar that lights up while I'm playing, and I assume that that's not a loading bar. That's just my phone listening to me.
Yeah, that's your CIA indicator.
It is. It's
That's
just, hey, you're being listened to right now. What do you want? Like, oh, I will. I've been wanting a new mattress for a while. And then when I close Pokemon Go and I open up something else, I get mattress notifications and mattress advertisements. Um, so you know what? This all makes sense. This is it. That's just the CIA letting me know that hey, we're here for you, kind of.
there's a part of me that would just crack up if your phone would just ding, you get an alert and it goes, Gilman Louis is now observing you. Hey
Oh, I
Gilman.
better be on my best behavior. Gilman Louis is he's watching me do my things.
Well, how many times have you and I been talking on the phone and we'll say like, hey man, like I don't want to hear that, you don't want to hear that. The CIA on the other line, they're hanging up their headsets. So that joke actually has some real world applications
Yeah,
now.
oddly more merit than we ever gave it.
Yeah. And I'm happy we were able to bring it to you as well. So now you can question any odd light that pops up on your cell phone.
while you're playing Pokemon Go or anything else, really, I guess,
Yeah,
but especially Pokemon Go.
and to tie it back to Pokemon Go, um, one last thing, and some folks will probably know this one, but I always like to mention it because it's just hilarious to me. So the Niantic was actually a whaling vessel in the 1800s, and this is what really helped formulate the Niantic company as we know it. Is that John Hankey has an interest in history, so him and I are both kind of students of history. The more I read into him, and the Niantic actually ran aground in 1849. Long story short, basically, once it entered the harbor, the charter basically ended for it. People weren't, whaling anymore with it, and little by little, the crew just basically, pieced out. They just said, "Yeah, hey, we're gonna take off. The gold rush is happening. You know, I got stuff to do.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yep.
I got kids to feed." So yeah, the Niantic literally just ran aground, and it's just chilling out there for a while. And what it would end up becoming is like basically a really weird looking storage facility, then later a hotel, and now it's a museum. So
Ooh.
yeah, so Hankey's original idea for Niantic based technologies was to pretty much help you on a field trip. If you're visiting and you're near a museum or some historical marker, his technology would help you find it. It would give you a notification, and just like your geocaching comment from
Hmm.
before, this would help you find out where that is.
Yeah, and I
So
think there are apps that do that, and I don't know if they're produced by Niantic at all, but I remember like I used to have apps that would like, hey, if you walked past something like that was remotely historic, you get a notification saying, hey, by the way, did you know that building you just passed by was once used by Abraham Lincoln to go to the bathroom one day? You'd be like, oh no, I never knew that. But thank you. I do know now. Um, but no, that's crazy. I had no idea that like Niantic had any sort of involvement in that.
yeah, it's a pretty interesting journey from basically just starting off with
Hmm.
MMOs and ending up with geocached or Google Maps based technologies, AR, and all that.
Hmm.
So for all of the faults of John Hankey here, there is some credit we can give him just based on how long he stuck with this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's always been that Google connection, as well, because he
Hmm.
worked for Google in the past, and there was a partnership between Niantic and Google for a while until they would separate just before some of the early foundations of these AR games we've talked about. So oddly enough, though, it would end up being Google that allows them to have enough data available for a lot of these things to occur. So
Hmm.
either way, yeah. So interesting relationship there, but I thought that it might be a cool idea to kind of go down memory lane because everybody knows about Pokemon Go. We know about, a lot of people know about it, but may not always know about some of that history behind the scenes there.
Yeah, no, that's fun because like I just assumed that like Pokemon Go started with Ingress and that was like kind of like the open and shut of it. That Ingress came in and it was a game that has a pretty niche following. I remember like the early days of Pokemon Go running into people who were still playing Ingress. Um, and they tried telling me that my game had a much quicker burnout time and it was checkers compared to chess. And I just said, okay, and went about my day. And I think that made them mad enough when I wouldn't really react to their um less than subtle but pretty snide remark about them playing their game versus me playing mine. But yeah, no, I just thought that was kind of it. Like Ingress was the start of it, and you had your weird weather map looking game, and then they took that data and they used that for Pokemon Go, and that's where we are today. Is thanks to Ingress for that,
Yeah.
and thank you, I guess, to the Ingress players who helped with that early stage. But we're much beyond that now.
Yeah. I remember that one
Yeah.
chance encounter I had with an Ingress player very early on in Pogo. And this isn't to throw the Ingress players under the bus here because they're not all like this, but I remember I was hunting Bulbasaur one time. And like I mentioned in the early days of Pogo, you just approach people with their phones out because you could assume, right? And this Ingress player, when I asked him, "Hey, are you guys hunting Bulbasaur too?" And he said, "No." we're playing Ingress, the adult version of Pokemon Go.
Ugh.
And I pulled my best Neil deGrasse Tyson and was like, oh, we got a badass over here. All right. All right. I'm going to go that way now. And you guys enjoy your adult time over here. And we'll see you later.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Yeah. Well, once
But
again,
yeah,
not to
so
throw them
again,
up.
not all the Ingress players, just three. Just three. Just three. The one dude I ran into, and then the two dudes that Mark ran into, and that's it. That's all. But yeah, so that Niantic had Ingress, and there's all this other foundation of Ingress. And now we have Pokemon Go in its current form, which like let's look at like kind of like how Pokemon Go has really changed in I guess what
Yeah, 5 years.
5 years now. Like
Yeah.
it's gone through quite a bit of a like a facelift and overhaul from when it first came out. Because literally when it first came out, all we could do was catch Pokemon, and that was it. We could catch them, we could evolve them. For traditional players, it was really weird that they had to basically feed them candy to evolve them.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever, okay, no big deal. We'll get used to it. It's just a game mechanic. And it'll be fun. And then after a while, it's like, okay, well, if catching is the only thing we can do, because all the things we were promised in the launch trailer we talked about earlier, like you can't challenge trainers to battles yet.
Mm-mm.
There are no gyms quite yet in the game.
Yeah.
And you
the gym,
can't trade
yeah.
with each other. So I'm like, okay, well, all I can do is catch.
Well, the gyms that were in the game weren't the ones that we know now.
Mm-mm.
So the original gyms in the game, you could basically place a Pokemon on it if it was, if you fought it down or whatever. But you would actually have to essentially, quote unquote, train your Pokemon to raise the prestige of the gyms so that other people could join it with you. So it was much different than what we have now, which is a pretty simplistic one, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
gyms even then we're still tied into the game's monetary system, because that worked differently too, where you could the goal was to basically place Pokemon on gyms, and then you would essentially cash out. It'd be a gamble. So like you could place, I think it was like every time you placed a Pokemon somewhere, they gave you like 10 coins or something. If you cashed out. So if I saw like, oh hey, I've got a Pokemon in a gym, I hit cash out right away and I get 10 coins, and then I can't cash out again for 24 hours. Or I could gamble and keep going to gym to gym to gym, placing my Pokemon around everywhere, and could earn seemingly an infinite number of coins so long as I just kept placing over gyms, and I'd cash out.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I think back then it might have been 1 coin or 10 coins, I think, every, what was it, half hour or 10 minutes? I can't remember exactly.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And back then, like you mentioned, it was kind of a question of when do I collect, right? Like, do I know when I'm going to be able to do it? Because, I didn't take a ton of gyms back then. And yeah, I mean, if I was ever on 10, I was lucky anyway. So yeah, so after a while, that became a feature they would end up, changing. But the original game had that step, but like the 3-step tracking process, right? So you would see a Pokemon, there would be the 3 little footprints underneath it, and the closer that you would get to it, right? So if it was 1 footprint, the closer you got, you would get 2 and then 3.
Yeah.
And back then, if you remember, there was the leaves that would pop up on the on the sides of the sidewalks. You would know.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, you would know where spawn points were. And so so back then it was there was a little bit more of that let's go mentality, right? Because the raids weren't a thing yet. You couldn't even raid Pokemon. And so finding what seemed like the rarest ones would always involve having to park your car at 3 a.m. next to an assisted living facility and run out into a bog essentially to get a Snorlax, which
may or may not have been done between the two of us.
and I may or may not have kept that Snorlax, which I believe I named Mr. Lickbeam. And yeah, it's still very much a part of my inventory as well. Because back then it was a bit more of an event, right? Like the original 151 or /150, there were some of these Pokemon that, like, unless you were cheating, which is what was called spoofing or whatever you want to call it, back then it was like I hadn't even seen a Lapras. I didn't see a Lapras for almost the first, I think, 13 months of the game.
Yeah, it took quite a while to get a lot of these more rare Pokemon.
Yeah. yeah, so the
Mm-hmm.
actual hunting mentality was kind of a double-edged sword, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like my addictive personality was right there. I was grinding and playing all the time, but it was so hard to find some of these other Pokemon that I ended up taking, I think, geez, I think it was like two or three different breaks just within the
Yeah.
first year and a half of that game. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you stepped out too for a while.
I bowed out when I think like the first set of like big restrictions they put on, or maybe not restrictions, but there were a few restrictions they put on it early on, and then basically just like the company's response to players trying to play the game was horrible. I understand like trying to like keep it so cheating can't happen, but even like trying to like have like crowdsourcing, like being like, hey, I found this, go there and you can get it too, or I set up the scanner so you can see where things are.
Mhm.
Because if you're not doing that, it's completely blind luck running into anything. And it's hard to find anything. And the company really to this day still offers no real aid to its players to try and be successful at their own game, other than things that you can pay for and monetization we'll get to in a little bit. Um, but yeah, basically it just kind of felt like it was the company versus the players, and I'm like, well, this is crap. I'm gonna take a break from this. And so I think I stepped down for like a good like 4 months. I just stopped playing the game after a few changes. And I'm trying to remember exactly when this happened because it wasn't when the initial gym change happened, because I remember they had to change the gym system because when they introduced Blissey, if you stacked like
Oh my
six
god.
Blissies in a gym, like no one
Yeah.
could take that gym down. It just wasn't going down ever. So they changed the gym shortly after that. And it was sometime after that is when I stopped playing, I'm pretty sure. But it wasn't because of the gym stuff. It was just other things happened in the game that they started putting limits to them. Like, nope, I'm out. I'm done. Forget it. Walking away. Um, and then I eventually, when all my friends were still playing, I just came right back.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember exactly when that happened. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
actually in like 2017. I might be wrong on this, but I thought it was actually fairly early on. And but either way, like it's
Mm-hmm.
you're totally right there. Like these Blissey towers, as they called it. I mean, you would see this thing and you'd flip through the trainers in it and you go, I don't have 4 hours to spend.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go do something else. and and
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, so to Niantic's credit, I mean, I know a lot of people didn't like the new gym system because
Mm-hmm.
it was quote unquote maybe too easy or too casual, in a sense for people to join in and be
Yeah.
a part of. I mean, I like the idea of having to kind of earn your spot in a
Mm-hmm.
gym, because
Yep.
the Pokemon Go mentality of training a Pokemon and growing with it and all that stuff, that spirit makes sense to me. Um, but to your point of the of Pokemon Go at times seeing like it's almost company versus player. Part of that to me, I felt was because the game was, I think it's technically still in beta at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it might as well be that they're constantly adding things to the game where there's no sequel to it. It's the same game, and they'll have some features that are just basically meant to test out a bigger feature that's rolling out later in the game. So yeah, it's pretty much always under construction.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of mobile games don't have an end game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just kind of the point. The whole point is to, pull you in with some repeatable free things that you can do. And then as you progress, you need to purchase additional things, either have more fun or make the game easier or progress. And from the Pokemon Go standpoint, I mean, very early on, it became, well, you've got the first 150, 151, quote unquote. And then the only real new content that they had for a very long time was just the next generation of Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's still kind of a problem that they have nowadays, even though there's other functions in the game.
Mm-hmm.
But there's going to reach a point where um, they're going to run out of Pokemon to put into this game.
Yeah, and then when they run out of Pokemon, they have to kind of like fall back on like certain features of the games. And I mean, it took them what? How many? At least what 2 years before we were able to trade Pokemon with each other.
Oh my
which
god.
is like that was a feature that was immediate in like the handheld stuff. The same with battling other trainers. So it took them 2 to 3 years to get trading and PvP going in that game. So like, all right, yeah, well, like while they just keep introducing other generations of Pokemon, they kind of just limit other in-game experiences that made the handheld stuff great, like trading, battling. Um, there's no gym badge system in this game. I don't know, give them a few more years, maybe they'll introduce something like that into it, but they're
Well,
gonna have to do
yeah.
something.
Well, we do have gym badges, but not
Mm-hmm.
in the sense that the
Yeah.
games would have
Mm-hmm.
given us, right? Like
Yeah.
you go to a gym for a respective territory, you fight and you beat
Mm-hmm.
the trainer, they give you your badge, right?
Yeah.
And instead here you just walk up to a gym and you spin it and you get a medal. The medal
Mm-hmm.
is, you just have your standard, you move up to bronze, silver, and then gold.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that just takes a long time.
It does. It takes a long time. And sometimes um you talk with your friends and strategize ways to try and get them to gold as quickly as possible, which is achievable if you find a gym that doesn't have a lot of turnover to it and your Pokemon stays there for over 100 days. It only takes by like wait, it only takes like what 21 days or something to earn gold on a gym.
Yeah, the exact math is like 21 or 22 days.
Yeah,
And
something like
yeah.
that. But like we like Mark and I have been in gyms for into that triple digit range where they just sat there and we questioned if they were ever coming back.
And the worst part is that's not even all that long compared to other folks I've seen. the, I mean, I swear to God, there are like some people I
Mm-hmm.
know when the gym system first came out that or the new one,
Mm-hmm.
like they placed a Pokemon in that first day and that Pokemon's still there,
Yeah.
like just build a statue for
Mm-hmm.
it already. But
Yep. So
yeah,
when we start thinking of like any sort of like complacency in the game, like what can they do next to really like step up and make the game interesting? Let's take a look at some of the features that did make it interesting when basically they hit a level of complacency in the game. Like one that I remember like both of us being excited for was actually like the buddy system in that game. Like actually being able to have in-game friends was something that was pretty big when it came out that we both enjoyed.
yeah. I mean, the buddy system was
Mm-hmm.
was fantastic because so there was kind of this growing. I don't know if you want to call it like jealousy or something, but when you've got these big like metropolitan areas that people live in, the game is based on like cell phone data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they would kind of play with this over time. But in the beginning, it was just based on some older cell phone data that they had. So spawns were based off of that. And if you didn't live in a highly populated area, so rural players like yourself and other folks, they may not see some of these Pokemon for who knows years at a time, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so when the buddy system came out, you at least had a little bit of relief from that because if
Mm-hmm.
if at least you got your hands on one, then you could walk that buddy. It might still take you, 2 or 3 years, but you could,
Yeah.
max that thing out and,
You can
and
still
make
do
it
it.
usable at
Mm-hmm.
some point.
Yep. Other features like raids we talked about. Raids were really fun. And they still continue to be a fun part of the game. Also a stressful part of the game. At times, depending on what's being rated and what's not there. Um, Other features like I don't know, like PvP. That one was kind of a letdown for me. I didn't really like how they did PvP in this game. Um,
Well, there is some strategy involved with it, right?
oh yeah.
And so, there's despite all the strategy that's involved, sometimes a lot of the fights just end up coming down to whoever taps their phone the quickest, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and that's really the same issue that is kind of coming up with the raid system too. So we've talked about complacency before as an issue with Pokemon Go, and that's really what a majority of your time is spent doing. If you're fighting gyms, if you're raiding, if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing PvP, you're just furiously tapping your phone.
Yeah.
And most of the phones I've had in recent memory are all made out of glass. So no,
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
I get very clumsy with a phone in my hand for some reason. You saw it. I got a brand new glass faced phone, and you and I just went for a quick walk, and within 10 feet, I freaking dropped this thing.
Yep. That's when like the new curved edges were a thing with Samsungs,
Yes.
and there was no real good screen protector for them. So if it didn't fall flat on its face with a screen protector, it was pretty much screwed.
Yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it was like not wearing jeans but wearing chaps on a horse. Like that's what that felt like. I mean, I had no protection at all. I was out there in the wind and
Hmm.
so furiously tapping a phone that's broken.
Yeah, not
Those,
comfortable.
those little bits of glass, they really do start to hurt after a while. like like
Hmm.
scars may form, but sometimes things don't ever truly heal, and that would definitely be one of them. Um, but the
Hmm.
complacency has been a major issue because,
Yeah.
like we talked about, how there's no real end game here. The only thing
Hmm.
that you can really pour your time and your effort and your resources in uh, would just be to power your Pokemon up to the maximum level, which
Hmm.
after 4.5 years, we finally got the level 40 to level 50
Hmm.
increase. So I guess you can kind of put your time into that nowadays. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, one of the advice of one of my friends that I won't name him specifically here, but
Hmm.
he kind of walks on water here in the city of Madison when it comes to Pokemon Go.
Hmm.
And what he always says about the game is that Pokemon Go is a game that you can pick whichever destination you want to have in it. So whether that's leveling up your Pokemon to a certain extent, collecting these gold gym badges, maybe setting a daily goal or something,
Hmm.
that's the frame of mind that he has with it. Um, and personally, I think it's always going to be one of those games where I just get tired of it after a while.
Yep.
I might play it for just like the daily things that you can do,
Hmm.
and then when they finally start adding functionality or another generation of Pokemon, then I might jump back in again.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what the game's being reduced to at this point. Like, um, I know I still play, like, again, like I'm playing now because what we paid $15 for an event that isn't quite over for us yet because we got quests from the event that are carrying on for at least a month afterwards. And which sounds like, oh, hey, maybe these guys complain about something. Like they got an event where they've still got something new to do every day for 30 days. Yeah, but it's kind of a lame thing to do for 30 days. It's literally like catch a Pokemon for 30 days straight. Like,
Oh, it's worse than that
okay, I
though.
guess that's exciting.
It's worse
Um,
than that, Joe, because
yeah.
they made it like a quest where you have to catch a certain amount of Pokemon that
Hmm.
aren't even in the wild right now because of the events they've been running since then.
Oh my
And
gosh,
there's only
yeah.
certain ways
Hmm.
you can get them. And so this frustration that you mentioned is kind of
Hmm.
it's a permanent feature of Niantic and how they approach the game. And there are numerous cases of things they've done where a lot of us just kind of groan and go, like, are they not trying to make money off of this?
Hmm.
Because if you remember back in the first Pokemon Go Fest, during our world peace discussion that we had,
Yeah.
the first Pokemon Go Fest was a critical disaster.
Oh, huge. You had people who didn't pay for the event were able to access event Pokemon. Um uh People like literally flew from all over the country. I think in some cases from different parts of the planet to play this game. And you have again like people who aren't even in like the set area where things are supposed to spawn are getting Pokemon. The game is crashing left and right where people are not even able to play the game. And they paid what? I think it was probably something like about $30 to play the game or to like
Yeah.
to be in the event. But then you have the people like, okay, well, like I also paid for a plane ticket to get here. I paid for a hotel to stay here and I've got all this expense wrapped up into this, and the game's not even working.
It was awful. I mean, they
Mm-hmm.
literally they broke like the cell phone grid out there
Mm-hmm.
during the first Pokemon Go Fest. People couldn't even sign to the game. John Hankey's up there on stage trying trying not to get eaten alive by the
Oh
crowd.
my gosh, that was definitely probably one of my favorite like YouTube videos I've seen like ever is John Hankey getting on that stage
It's getting
and
booed.
not even getting a word out and getting booed.
It was like Monty Python levels of hilarity with how
Hmm.
much they were screaming at him, and after a while, it was just I never felt bad for him because
No.
I mean, you knew how many people registered for this event,
Hmm.
right? Like you knew what kind of like technology you would probably have to leverage in order for this to work.
Hmm.
And the Niantic servers in these events would persist as a problem for more than just that first year. I mean, it would,
There's
it,
still problems. Well, we did Go Fest this year, and that we had servers were an issue.
quote unquote, yeah, Go Fest, right?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
they had this event for the, the Kanto, Pokemon and all that. And I mean, and that was the specific issue you mentioned, the
Oh
people
no,
who
no,
didn't even.
actual Go Fest. Like, do you remember last summer when we played Go Fest and like you couldn't do anything for the first hour of the event?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I definitely I used the entire vocabulary that day. Like you only
Hmm.
hear like the polished and scripted, Mark voice usually.
But if you were playing Go Fest with Mark that day, you got off the cuff Mark,
Oh,
and off the cuff Mark. Um,
yeah. You
yeah,
got you
yeah,
got language
I can't even.
you'd only hear in an Italian deli in New York. Like this is I even probably put the accent in there too because it was so frustrating because
Hmm.
everybody else around me seemed to be okay in the car we're driving in, and for some reason, like the servers at Niantic kind of pinpointed on my phone. They're like, yeah, let's just fuck this guy in particular, right? you know, he's trying to have fun. Yeah,
Hmm.
fuck this guy. Who cares? He
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
need to
Who
play.
gives a shit?
Yeah, don't worry
Hmm.
about the copious amounts of paychecks I've poured into this game, which we won't.
No.
We won't
Yep.
be doing any real money math on that one.
Yep. There'll be no account for inflation or any sort of any number game today for that reason.
Well, there's one number I do want to point out, and
Hmm.
this is a reason why I get pretty frustrated with Niantic, and it's because in 2020 they made over $1 billion in revenue.
Hmm.
Now, since Niantic became a thing, like since Pokemon Go launched, they've made $4.2 billion off of us poor bastards. And so when you're talking about the monetization of this game, there is no end game, right?
No.
So
Hmm.
how on earth are people spending money playing Pokemon Go, Joe?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's like just a few like subtle things that are still enjoyable. Like there are some addicting things to this game that are still there. Like we talk about like the shiny variants in the game, which I remember like playing like the handheld games. And aside from like the original like Pokemon Gold and Silver where you were guaranteed a red Gyarados in a certain part of the story. Like I didn't catch a shiny until Gen 4.
Mhm.
That was actually a random shiny. Um so it took me 4 generations of Pokemon to actually catch one. That's how like rare and hard they were. And I at least caught it because I also remember like just the sadness that was the day that I remember playing Heart Gold and Soul Silver with my friend Aaron Henn in college, my vanilla bear as I called him. Um, he was playing Soul Silver and he gets a shiny Geodude. He's like, "No way, a shiny Geodude! This is incredible!" And then he throws a Pokeball at it. It breaks. The ball breaks. The Geodude gets out, and then it immediately uses the move Self Destruct
Oh
and faints
no.
itself. And he
Jesus.
was just devastated. It killed him. So
Yeah.
at least like I think of my poor friend Aaron Henn, and I think of like modern day shiny hunting, and at least I will give Niantic the idea that like I'm happy that I wouldn't have to go through 4 generations of Pokemon Go to catch a shiny Pokemon. Other than like obviously shinies weren't in the game right away. It took a while for them to be introduced, but when they were
March. Yeah.
introduced, the likelihood of catching one in Pokemon Go is higher than catching them in like the old games. Unless like, you use the old methods of chain catching Pokemon with the Poke Radar. But in Pokemon Go, you just have a higher chance of getting them. So
Yeah.
I think like when you think of things you enjoy in the game, like we both love going shiny hunting. We both love catching that variant because even though they are more frequent than the original games, they are still relatively rare. So to be able
Mhm.
to get one, it's like you get this tiny, nice little shot of dopamine. It's like your immediate like dopamine is like the immediate happy chemical. So you get it and like, ooh, yes, this is fantastic. This wants to keep me going. And I feel like that's kind of like almost what we're down to in the game is you get a new wave of shinies. that are in the game. They're introduced. So like the Pokemon's been in the game, but now it's available to be shiny. And like, ooh, the shiny variant's cool. We've got to hunt this thing. We've got to get it. And that's what kind of keeps us going. But
I
then
would say,
like,
Joe, at this
mhm.
point, like the effect that I get on this is basically like someone who uses a lighter to burn themselves, right? Like that's that's where we are with regards to
Mhm.
shinies at this point, because the the absolute mindfuck and torture known as
Mhm.
shinies in Pokemon Go began in March of 2017, so almost, almost 4 years from today,
Yeah.
and they did start it off same spirit, the
Mhm.
shiny red Gyarados, like the Magikarp was the first shiny in the game. But when we've talked about raids and PvP and these other features that eventually got added later on, shinies have really been one of those few things that have been consistent,
Mhm.
since then. But they're one of the few things that Niantic thinks is like actual content,
Yeah.
because that's the only thing that really is offered in some of these events where
Mhm.
they feature a type of Pokemon or a theme of Pokemon. And it's like, and if you're lucky, or if you're a sad bastard that goes out until 3 a.m., you might be lucky enough to encourage
Yeah.
this new shiny, or
Mhm.
encounter this new shiny.
Yep.
And so that's unfortunately what it is. Because if you're not a big fan of PvP, which
Mhm.
there are people who are dedicated
Oh
to it,
yeah. Mhm.
and if you're interested in that, hey, go nuts. Like, feel free, go ahead and do it. But if you're not playing PvP and you don't want to spend your paycheck on the raid system,
Mhm.
really, that's about all there is for you at this point. You
Yeah,
know,
is getting shinies, and that makes you wonder, like, where do we go from here? Like, and even then, looking at a lot of the major mechanics of the game, other than raiding, raiding is of course like that's a thing exclusive to Pokemon Go, but like Mega Evolutions, shinies, PvP, trading, um, I guess gym battles to an extent. These are all based off of handheld concepts from the original games. So when you look at like where their games are gone, you have like the Galar region is new, and now they have like this thing where the Pokemon grow really, really big. Um,
hmm
I
yep.
haven't played Sword and Shield, so I don't know the proper term for it. And I also don't know if it's any fun from the friends that I have who have played the two games. They weren't big fans, so I have not. I've held off since then. Um, but like, where does it go from here? Does it just kind of like keep copying the handheld games and the trends that they go with, um or do they have to
Well,
branch out and think of something new to do?
in recent memory, Joe,
Mm-hmm.
it's just more of this microtransaction bullshit that
Yeah.
EA has,
Mm-hmm.
just perfected throughout the years. Because if we look back at, let's just use the last year of Pokemon Go as our
Mm-hmm.
example, because when you ask where does Pokemon go from here,
Mm-hmm.
it's offering these tickets to encounter a type of Pokemon,
Mm-hmm.
and we can use like the Galarian, Mr. Mime as an
Mm-hmm.
example. Like, they put Mr. Mime behind a paywall. You had to
Yep.
buy the ticket. If you didn't buy the ticket, you didn't encounter Mr. Mime.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of stuff they're doing now. And if it were me, like if I was working at the company, I would say give these poor people some kind of actual story.
Yeah.
Like they
Mm-hmm.
tried to with this Team Rocket stuff, where you can encounter Giovanni and his his boy band every month.
Mm-hmm.
But and for those of you watching at home, Giovanni is the leader of the Team Rocket folks that are, well, I'm assuming also eating some Pokemon, but they're stealing Pokemon from people. They're turning them into
They're making
shadow
them shadow
Pokemon,
Pokemon. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which I've heard they just give them a lot of PBR. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
It's just I thought it was that and Monster energy
Ooh.
drinks.
And every one of those shadow Pokemon is named
Mm-hmm.
Kyle as well. They
Yep.
punch a lot of drywall.
Mm-hmm. They wear a lot of like tap out clothing and backwards hats.
Jinko jeans. I don't know where they
And
find them, but they've
no,
got them.
there's still like those are still a thing. You can buy Jinko jeans. By the way, Monster, PBR, Jinko jeans, tap out.
Ooh,
Um,
not
none
sponsors.
of which are sponsors.
Yeah,
None of them are
we
sponsoring us, and after this episode, probably never will. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
It's okay though.
it's
That's
okay.
okay.
It's
Hey,
fine. It's
we're
okay.
small enough. We're
Yeah, we're
small enough.
okay. We
We're
don't
not
we
on the
need that.
radar.
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
yeah.
microtransactions, awful.
And that's really all there is to offer folks. And so there are some people that I know who have played the game since day one.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been playing since like day 4, I think, because I wanted to pretend like I didn't want to play it, but then the addictive personality kicked in.
Mm-hmm.
But there are people that are doing the same things that you and I do too, where they hit the initial level cap and then they just left the game because there
Yeah.
is no end game.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not interested in the generation of Pokemon, like a lot of people that like this game kind of fell within that millennial range. I would say the millennials who remember the 80s and part of the early 90s, right? Because
Yeah.
we all pretty much grew up with this at its
Mm-hmm.
earliest stages. And so you end up meeting a lot of people within that age range who, I mean, hey, nostalgia can only go so far,
Yep.
right?
Oh,
So
completely.
there's a lot of folks finding the exits that
Mm-hmm.
may come back, and that's, I mean, ultimately, I think that's going to be what's happening to me. I mean, I'm kind of already at that point.
Yeah, I mean, we look at like the level of play that we used to really put into this game, and it's gone down dramatically. Like of course, like the bigger events they do, like we said, we both did Go Fest, we did the Kanto event, but even then, with how I guess how disappointing, at least, I mean, really, it was disappointing for you both events. It was disappointing for me for one event. Um, but even then, like I have to think like I don't think I'd pay another $15 to do another event for this game. Like how with given how the last one was, and we were told like, hey, based off of the game you get, you have these increased odds of getting these shiny Pokemon, et cetera, et cetera. And we grinded the whole day, the whole event, and like we both barely got anything.
It felt more like a
Mm-hmm.
job than a game at that point.
It did.
And that's where the
Mm-hmm.
the camel's back began to break. I mean, if that's the best thing they can come up with, given the circumstances we have with COVID, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it really makes me wonder what they can even do as a company to win some of us back who are starting to see the cracks and
Mm-hmm.
start to realize just how long ago 2016 was.
Yeah.
So I mean, at this point, I don't even know what they could do to really beef this game up. I'm not sure if you've got anything that you would want to give them as a nugget.
I don't know, I guess like what you said, like a story mode would be cool in some way. Like some sort of thing that's not like a mindless quest. Like with like their idea of stories is just a quest. Like you have to, oh, to meet Giovanni, you have to beat this many grunts and then beat this many rocket leaders and then he appears, sort of thing. Well, it was a good thing to start with, but now like you're just rinsing and repeating that for anything you deem a story is just kind of lame quest after lame quest where like again like you said like they don't feel like challenges anymore, they feel like a job, and not even a good job. Like this is a like a terrible 9 to 5 summer job that we all have to do and we all hate because we got to start working somewhere. And that's kind of what it feels like when we do these things. And like you said, like now like we're still playing the game based off of these Kanto events. I've been trying to catch 30 dark Pokemon for almost 30 days now and I haven't done it
Yeah, you would
because
think.
like they've
Yeah.
taken they effectively they've taken that entire type out of the game except for was a very limited raid window, and even then it wasn't even like it was an easy raid, it was a mega raid, so you had to rely on friends to help you with that.
Hmm.
And like you have to run into like random rocket grunts because, and even then like I remember like driving around looking for rocket grunts, which by the way, like I know like driving and playing is frowned on by people, but like when you live in a more rural area, like I'm not walking around all of my town to try and find these places because that's ridiculous. But
Everybody does it.
anyway, I'm going to these places and it's mostly like water or fire or flying or that one asshole with his super bug Pokemon that no one cares about. And like I couldn't get dark Pokemon. Like this is ridiculous. Like they used to be like they had common like Murkrows or Puchinas or things everywhere, and now they're just out of the game. And it makes me think like, was this done on purpose? We're like, okay, we're gonna draw this out because we've effectively taken this whole type out of the game. Ha ha ha! That's what we call challenging. Or is it like these guys are idiots? They didn't realize they've done this, and now we've got these events stacked after each other. We're like, what this stupid season of Legends is taking place over like literally like 90 days.
Hmm.
And and now like we were missing this type for 90 days. So that's your idea of extending the life of the game? Like,
Yeah,
no.
it's a pretty bad tactic, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've seen other games do this too, where especially like console games, sometimes console
Mm-hmm.
games will give you some of these meaningless droned on tasks that don't necessarily do anything for the plot of the game. They're just there so that if you want to mindlessly play for hours on end and not
Mm-hmm.
question the experience, that's what this stuff's kind of there for.
Yeah.
And
Stealth missions, we're looking at you.
oh
Every
yeah,
single damn stealth mission ever made.
stealth missions.
Ugh.
Yeah, and that's kind of the issue at hand here is that
Mm-hmm.
Niantic has made billions of dollars with this property, and you would think at some point they would put that money to good use, right? Fix some basic issues. I
Mm-hmm.
don't just put code on top of code. Like actually think about this stuff and how it's going to affect people, because you're obviously frustrated by this most recent event. I know
Mm-hmm.
I was, and I'm not saying we speak for everybody, but I'm sure there's at least more than two people who have felt that
Oh,
way.
probably. Um, Getting close to wrapping things up here, just thinking like at least one thing I know that would probably make the game more enjoyable for me. And again, what's really frustrating about it is because it exists in other games that Niantic has, is when you're going to raid like a tier one raid and it's just you and you don't need help, put in a damn button that just says start the raid. I don't need to wait 2 minutes to take down a friggin' Turtwig. Like, nope, I can do this on my own. I'm doing this dumb raid quest you have for me today. And I would really like to just raid this one tier raid to get it over with. But no, I will sit here and contemplate my existence for the next few minutes as I wait to start this raid. So at least put mechanics that you have in other games that are successful into the game that is basically what put your company on the map. Sorry, Ingress, no one cares. This is the game that actually made Niantic something.
Well, Joe, here's something that I've done a few times, and I don't recommend that anyone who's played this game for any serious amount of time actually goes back and does. But the game does tell you how many standard raids you've done and how many
Oh
legendary
no.
raids you've done,
Oh
right?
yeah, it does. Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever wondered how long you've been standing around waiting for a lobby to begin, Joe just mentioned each lobby takes 2 minutes if you start it brand new, right? So I don't like to make a habit of doing this too often, Joe, because the amount of time I've spent standing around, let's just say for me to be conservative, we're going to be talking that I've been standing around for probably an entire
Mm-hmm.
month of my life, just waiting for for raids to start. But here's something I think will be a good thing to leave off on, because obviously this game introduced us to a lot of people. There's a lot of folks that I actually talk to on a daily basis now that I never would have met had this game not come out.
Mm-hmm.
And so for Pokemon Go, for all of its faults and all the things that it's done wrong, one of the things that John Hankey did get right with his mission statement of bringing people together and just increasing this social interaction, at least at minimum, that has happened, right?
Yeah.
Like we do have the platform. Things like the Silk Road exist now. That's
Mm-hmm.
on Reddit, where you can actually go and look up all these topics. You can go find help. You can ask people from all around the world for this type of assistance. And so, at minimum, there are some nice things that came out of this 5-year journey with Pokemon Go. Obviously, there's a lot of issues that come along with it too. But I guess we'll see if we're still a part of it 5 years from now.
Yeah, who knows? I'm just waiting for them to put that Galarian Corgi Pokemon in the game so I can name him Sullivan after my Corgi, and he will never stop being my buddy.
And then you can truly rest.
Yeah, that's when I know I can walk away. Let's be frank. I'm not getting to level 50 unless you can just flat out purchase XP. I'm assuming by that point, I've probably lost interest anyway.
Joe, I think we just gave Niantic more help with microtransactions. But hey, we hope you enjoyed this week's discussion. And if you're still playing Pokemon Go, then join the conversation and tell us about it. We're on Spotify, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook by searching for @DigitalDissect1 or Digital Dissection, a nerd podcast. Please also leave us a review no matter where you found us, as this helps us quite a bit to grow. Also, tell a friend while you're at it. This will all help us to keep this show afloat as we desperately try to balance the crushing weight of our other commitments. But next week, we're going back to the future, but not the one you're probably thinking. We're heading to the 31st century and talking about Futurama, the show with a ton of heart that really means to punch you square in the feels. And until next time, keep on dissecting.